Hello, I'm Larry Lormond, and I'm glad you're with me today. You're probably noticing that the video looks a little different today. I'm actually in North Carolina visiting my oldest son, who's a military chaplain here at Fort Bragg, Captain Lance Lormond. And we're really here to see the grandkids, but the adults are around, so we kind of have to be nice to them. But we've been having lots of fun with the kids this morning, and I thought that I'd recorded this video before I left, but I hadn't. I was trying to get everything done before I left. But we're in lesson 3. And the lesson title today is Rise and Build. Back in the old days, that was a very prominent theme for Baptist churches when we'd go into a building program. A lot of us called it Rise and Build. We're in Nehemiah chapter 2, verses 11 through 20. The main idea of the lesson today is when God called Nehemiah to rebuild the wall, he also provided resources to accomplish this task. Nehemiah developed a plan and called on the people to stand with him to rebuild the wall. And so, God has the sheep on 1,000 hills. The problem is he makes us stewards of it, and sometimes we cooperate and sometimes we don't. So basically, the lesson this week is Nehemiah shows up in Jerusalem, and man, it is in shambles. It's been that way for 70 years. You just can't imagine. I think about Berlin at the end of the war. You've seen video of the buildings just crumbled in the streets, and the bombing of London, during the war, and by the Nazis, and terrible sight. But this has been going on for a long time, and you just have to wonder, why is that? Why didn't somebody come forward and take the lead and rebuild the wall? Well, I guess God in his timing, he said through Jeremiah, they were going to be there 70 years. So don't just think you're going to go back in a year or two out of exile back to Jerusalem. They'd been there 70 years. That's almost 2 generations. Generation in the Old Testament is 40 years because God allowed the people to wander around in the wilderness for 40 years until that group of people died. So when you measure a generation in the Bible, it's 40 years. So interesting thing. But anyway, he gets to Jerusalem and it's in shambles. And there's just chaos everywhere. Even though the Persians had inherited the land when they defeated the Babylonians, it's still a mess. And it's kind of like no man's land, every man for himself. And yeah, the Persians own it, but no one's in charge. They don't have like the fire department or the police department down the street patrolling at night. It was the strongest versus the weakest. And it was just terrible. Bad situation. And that's exactly the situation that Ezra and Nehemiah faced. It's hard to rebuild something when everybody around you is your enemy and they're trying to keep you from doing anything positive that may threaten them. And we're going to see that in today's lesson. Nehemiah is confronted by it. And so we're not going to read the first 10 verses of chapter 2, but Nehemiah goes and asks the king for permission to go back to Jerusalem. And the king says yes. And he also gives him safe passage and he gives him resources to do what he needs to do. Now, this land is in famine. You think of places like Haiti. Our church used to go to Haiti, but it's become so dangerous that you could be kidnapped in the airport in Port-au-Prince, and certainly outside of there. We just stopped going because it wasn't safe for people to go. And that's a lot of what Nehemiah is going to be facing when he gets to Jerusalem. But he gets there, and first thing that he does in chapter 2, 11 through 16, is he takes a quick inventory of the situation. And man, just by reading of the text, you can see that it's a pretty bad situation. So let's read chapter 2, verses 11 through 16. I went to Jerusalem, and after staying there 3 days, I set out during the night with a few others. Had not told anyone what my God had put in my heart to do for Jerusalem as far as rebuilding the wall. There was no mounts with me except the one I was riding on. He's talking about, well, I rode a horse or a donkey, but it was just me riding this thing. By night, I went out through the valley gate towards the Jackal Well and the Dung Gate. Isn't that an interesting name for a gate? I guess it's where they kept their mounts. Examining the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken down, and its gates, which had been destroyed by fire. Total destruction. Then I moved on towards the fountain gate and the king's pool, but there was not enough room for my mount to get through. Now, can you imagine? The wall is so destroyed that he couldn't even ride his horse through there. So I went up the valley by night, examining the wall. Finally, I turned back and re-entered through the valley gate. The officials did not know where I'd gone or what I was doing, because as yet I had not said anything to the Jews or the priests or the nobles or officials or any others who would be doing the work. And so Zerubbabel had already led a group back to rebuild the temple, and Ezra came after him and kind of reinstituted the work of the temple. But Solomon's temple was a grand temple, beautiful, big, beautiful thing. This temple was just a minor building. It was not much. They didn't have the resources to do it like Solomon did, so they did the best they could, but they got it reinstituted, rebuilt, and started the temple worship again. So Nehemiah shows up, and he hadn't even told anybody yet what he's thinking and what he believes the Lord has called him to do. So he goes out at night, probably safer at night in some ways, to just kind of check the place out and see what he's dealing with. He had never been there before. And, it's hard to get around in this place. It's in such bad shape. But he's just trying to figure out what am I going to have to do? I mean, what's the scope of the work? Pretty smart, isn't it? He's a smart guy. He's just trying to get it set in his mind what he's dealing with, and that's an important thing. To do anything, you got to wrap your brain around it and size up the task and kind of know where we go from here. So the next passage is he talks to his people. He's building consensus with his people. Its verse is 17 and 18. Then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in? Oh boy, they're in trouble, aren't they? Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. Well, they won't no longer be in danger. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me. So he's inspiring them. He's going to tell them about his relationship to the Lord and what he believes the Lord wants him to do, and how God's already given him the ability to do it, and that the king released him from his duties and gave him resources to do it. And so he's building consensus, and he is telling them what where he is with it all. They can see quickly the Lord is in it. Look at the end of verse 18. They replied, let us start rebuilding. So they began this good work. This is a thing that Nehemiah can't do it by himself. He's got to have people to help him. And that's how it always is. A leader is not a leader if he's not leading other people. Well, guess what? Immediately he faces opposition. It's always going to happen. You can get ready. I jokingly say the devil goes to church every Sunday, and anytime you get ready to do something for the Lord, you're going to face opposition, even at church. How about that? So get ready. It's going to happen. You shouldn't be mean to those people, but the tail shouldn't wag the dog. Okay, and you can't let negative people keep you from doing what you know is God's will, because they will. Well, he doesn't do that. Let's read the last two verses where he immediately faced opposition, 19 and 20. When Sanballat the Horonite, Tobiah the Ammonite official, and Geshem the Arab heard about it, they mocked and ridiculed us. What is this you're doing? They asked. Are you rebelling against the king? Which is the opposite. The king's already granted it. See, they don't know the facts. I answered them by saying, he's confronting them. The God of heaven will give us success, not me, the Lord will. His servants will start rebuilding. But as for you, you have no share in Jerusalem or any claim or historic right to it. Now, these guys are evil people. They have power because of their corruption. And Nehemiah is pushing back against these three characters. Let me find a slide. I'm having to work a little different than I normally would. Let me share with you a little bit about these three characters. Sanballat, he appears to be the primary adversary, and he may have been the governor of Samaria to the north, which became an adversary to the Judah in the south. His name is Babylonian and means the moon gives light. Now, before the Persians took possession of the land, the Babylonians destroyed the temple and destroyed Judah in 586 BC. So this guy's an enemy from way back. Okay? He's Babylonian. He's from the previous terrible regime that destroyed the city to begin with 70 years before. Tobiah, he's an Ammonite, and he may have been the governor of Ammon, and his name means Yahweh is good. Now, we know that the Ammonites were enemies of Israel, and they were descendants of Lot and Lot's daughter. So he's got a godly name, but he's not a godly person. He's an enemy. Okay, the Ammonites were never friendly to Israel. Geshem, his name means rain, and he's Arab. Now, the Arabs enjoyed a favored status with the Persians. They were the majority around this place, and Israel's a minority. He probably believed a stronger Jewish nation would threaten his trade business. And so it's all about what they want and what they feel is being threatened. And so, who knows? But, they're enemies. And so immediately Nehemiah faces opposition from these characters that are only looking out for themselves. They're not looking out for anybody else. So let me get to my slide again, and let me give you some truths to the lesson. First one is make sure you understand the facts when you go to work for the Lord. That's what he's doing. He's going out to get the facts, not someone else's opinion of the facts. Y'all know how that is. You need to know what the real facts are. And people distort the facts. So Nehemiah is going out there to find out for himself what the facts are. Second thing is leaders lead other people. The Lord's work is never done alone. So he knew that. He's just one person. He's got great ability, but he cannot accomplish rebuilding the wall by himself. He needs the people. And so he gets the facts, then he goes to the people. Good plan. Good plan. The last truth is be sure that when you work to change anything, you will face opposition. I can't tell you how many people got their feelings hurt at church over this one thing. Well, it's a thing. It happens. Expect it. Nehemiah saw this fact very quickly. So, get ready. That's just how it is. People have different opinions. And Sometimes they're not very nice in sharing their opinions. And so you can't let that hurt you or destroy you. And it can't keep you from doing what you know God's will is for you. Nehemiah saw that very quickly. Well, let's pray. Jesus, we love you. We thank you for this great lesson in Nehemiah. I pray that you put us to work rebuilding walls around our lives, Lord, things that have fallen down because of the enemy. I pray that we would know the facts, we'd work with other people, and we'd work through opposition. In your name I pray. Amen. Pray you have a great week. I'm fixing to go play with my grandchildren while I'm here this week. You have a great spring break.